I never imagined I would hear the celebration of my own death. Not even in my worst nightmares could I have believed that the sound greeting me upon arriving home, my legs still trembling from having survived a shattered airplane, would be the pop of a cork, raucous laughter, and my son's voice shouting, "Bring out the champagne." Mom's plane went down. The inheritance is ours now. I felt my soul split in two. I, who had given my life for him, was listening to him party because I was no longer breathing. I stood paralyzed in front of the front door, my clothes still stained with soil and smoke from the crash. I hadn't even gone to a hospital. I had barely managed to walk to a taxi after crawling through the debris. As I rested my hand on the wood of the door, I shook like never before. I thought maybe I had heard wrong, that perhaps it was a misunderstanding, that my son couldn't possibly be celebrating my death. But then I heard my daughter-in-law's laugh, a laugh I would recognize in any lifetime. "Let's toast to freedom." Finally. And then, the sharp clink of glasses touching. That sound, that specific sound, finished breaking something inside me. But before I continue, I want to extend a very special invitation. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like. This helps me see that you support me and enjoy my stories. And comment down below which city you are watching from. Now, let's continue. I held my breath. I pressed myself against the siding next to the door. A deeper murmur caught my attention. It was my brother-in-law, Robert, my late husband's brother. I never thought it would happen like this, but look, better sooner than later. My fingers curled into a fist so tight I felt my nails digging into my skin. My son, my daughter-in-law, my brother-in-law. 3 people I had supported for years, celebrating that I had ceased to exist. I grit my teeth as a sharp pang of pain shot through my chest. What kind of monster had I raised? What kind of snake had I fed for so long? My son, Ethan, had been a sweet, sensitive boy, or at least, that's what I believed. Something in him had twisted, something in him had rotted. Maybe it was my fault, or maybe it was the people he surrounded himself with, but nothing justified this. I took a small step back, still not entering. I wanted to hear more. My daughter-in-law, Jessica, asked, "When can we start distributing everything?" Ethan responded with an impatient tone. "Tomorrow. I already called a lawyer. If the body never shows up, even better for us." If I had held any doubt, it vanished in that second. It wasn't shock, it wasn't nervousness. These were plans, deliberate plans. The air turned dense. I felt like my legs wouldn't hold me, but I forced myself to stand firm. I couldn't go in yet. Not like this. I had to hear everything I could. I had to know how deep the rot went. "Another man, with a voice thick from alcohol," Robert said. "I told you to insist that your mother take that flight. It was just a matter of time." The world stopped for me. My heart gave a jump so abrupt I lost my breath. Ethan had insisted I take that flight on purpose. I remembered his insistence. I remembered how he pushed me to travel alone, saying it would be good for me to clear my head. I remembered the strange feeling I had when I said goodbye before entering the terminal. I remembered the cold hug, the disinterest, the rush. The pieces clicked into place instantly. Too well, too late. I wanted to vomit. I leaned against the wall to keep from falling. Robert added, "I had my doubts, but I admit, it turned out better than expected." Ethan laughed. He actually laughed. "Oh, please. If she couldn't live alone anymore, she would have left us problems, not an inheritance. She would have died of sadness if fate hadn't given me the opportunity to." I heard it with my own ears. I wiped my face with my dirty sleeve. My breathing became slower, more controlled. My pain began to transform not into fear, not into sadness, but into something I had never felt toward my own blood. Rage. A rage so deep it made my back stop slouching, made my legs stop trembling, and made my soul stop begging for affection where there was only a void. I straightened up, took a deep breath, and opened the door. I didn't push it hard. I opened it slowly, deliberately, as if I wanted to give them the chance to feel the panic grow second by second. The music cut off instantly. The laughter died in their throats. Their eyes, my own family members, widened as if they had seen a ghost. Jessica dropped her glass, which shattered on the hardwood floor. Robert stepped back as if he had seen the devil, and Ethan, my son, paled until he looked like plaster. "Mom," he stammered. "No. It's not possible." The 3 of them began to scream. Screams of horror, of disbelief, of guilt, of terror. I took a single step inside the house. Just one. Enough for them to understand that I wasn't dead. Enough to freeze their blood. And with the calmest voice I had ever used, I said, "Relax. I haven't come to take anything away yet. I just came to listen." When my words resonated in the living room, the silence that followed wasn't a normal silence. It was a silence that cut, that weighed, that accused. It was the silence of three people facing the truth. I wasn't dead. And they were finished. Ethan was the first to react. He took a step back, tripped over a coffee table, and almost fell. Jessica's glass lay broken at her feet, the spilled wine looking like blood. The music still played very softly from the speaker in the dining room, a cheerful melody that made everything even more cruel. "Mom," he stuttered. "I thought we believed that." I raised a hand and stopped him without raising my voice. "Don't say anything yet. I want to see what your heart invents before your tongue starts lying." Jessica brought her hand to her chest, feigning astonishment, compassion, even relief. I observed her with the precision of a surgeon. Her eyes held no tears. Her breathing wasn't accelerated from emotion. Her posture wasn't that of someone grateful for my survival. It was the posture of an actress, just another one in my life. "Martha," she said with a trembling voice. "Thank God. I can't believe it. We thought the worst." "The worst," I interrupted her. "Or the best." She froze. Ethan pressed his lips together. Robert looked away. The smell of freshly opened champagne still filled the room. There was a table with appetizers, a cake, glasses ready to be passed out, festive music. It wasn't an atmosphere of tragedy. It was a party. My death party. I walked slowly through the living room with my shoes covered in dirt and my hands still scraped from the accident. I let every step speak louder than my words. Ethan tried to approach, but backed away when I looked up. "Do you know what hurts me the most?" I asked in a whisper. Ethan swallowed hard. Jessica squeezed Robert's hand. The three of them shrank back like children caught stealing. "That for years, I believed everything I did for you was out of love," I continued. "And now I discover that the only thing you were waiting for was my end." "Mom, no!" Ethan shouted. "You don't understand. We were scared." I laughed. A bitter, broken laugh. "Ah, yes, you were internally devastated while you toasted," Robert murmured. "It was a misunderstanding." I looked at him. A misunderstanding? Who says better sooner than later when they believe someone they love has just died? He shut his mouth. I watched as Ethan searched for words among the rubble of his own conscience, trying to build a lie that could sustain the unsustainable. "Mom," he started again, "I swear to you, I didn't want you to die. I was just nervous. I didn't know what to think." I leaned forward slightly, observing him with the same care one examines a wounded animal that might bite. "Tell me one thing, son," I whispered. "Were you nervous that the plane crashed, or were you nervous that I survived?" My question went through him like a knife. A minimal gesture escaped him, a rapid blink he didn't know how to hide. There was the truth. Jessica intervened, desperate to take control. "Martha, listen, you don't know everything. He was worried about you. We were in shock." "Shock?" I asked. "Is that why you ordered champagne?" Her lips trembled. It's just that I thought maybe we should toast to your life, you know?" "Toast to my life," I repeated with irony. "While you laughed, saying that finally you would be free of me?" Jessica went mute. I moved closer, slowly, never losing my control. I could feel them crumbling. Ethan finally snapped. "All right," he shouted. "Yes. We were celebrating." "So what? You never gave us anything easy. You always had to control everything. You always had something to say, something to criticize. I just wanted a quiet life." His confession didn't wound me. It confirmed everything. "And that's why you insisted on that flight?" I asked. His face became disfigured with panic. "What? No. I just... Don't deny it. I have a good memory. You insisted. You chose the date. You checked the schedule. You told me it was the best day to travel." Robert intervened clumsily. "I'm not sure it's good to talk like this. She is very upset." "Upset?" I asked. "Do you know who is upset?" The three stood still. Someone who hears their family celebrating their death while they still have the smell of jet fuel on their clothes. Ethan covered his face with both hands. He wasn't crying. He was desperate. A desperation that didn't come from losing his mother, but from losing the inheritance. "Mom, I swear I didn't know the plane was going to crash. I took one more step. But you knew that if it crashed, it would be useful to you, right?" Jessica let out a fake sob. Robert took a step back, fearing I would point an invisible weapon made of truths at him. "Do you know what I discovered today?" I said in a low voice, almost soft. "That death can reveal more than life." They looked at me without understanding. Because when everyone thinks you've died, they show who they really are. I studied them. My son, a coward. My daughter-in-law, a viper disguised as sweetness. My brother-in-law, a parasite waiting for his chance. And then I added, "Don't worry, I haven't come to fight, nor to cry, nor to ask for explanations." Everyone swallowed hard. "I have come to listen to you," I added, "to discover just how much you are willing to confess before I start talking." Their faces paled even more. They knew I had the power now, and they knew they weren't going to sleep peacefully that night because I had returned from hell and was ready to drag them down with me. When I closed the door behind me, leaving the three of them trembling in the living room, I felt something I couldn't identify. It wasn't relief, nor was it victory. It was a strange mixture, a thread made of sadness, fury, and clarity. I leaned against the exterior wall of the house and closed my eyes. My heart was pounding, but not from fear. It was a truth finally finding an exit after years of being buried. I walked slowly toward the side garden, that small space where I used to plant flowers when Ethan was still a boy. I knelt in front of the hard dirt. I ran my fingers over the surface, feeling the damp earth slip under my nails. That earth had been a witness to laughter. Afternoons, games, tears. Ethan had played there, run around, built mud castles. In that space, I had believed we were building an indestructible bond. But I was wrong. As the cold night wind hit my face, my mind went back without permission to the years when he was just a child. I remembered him coming home sad from school, shoulders slumped because someone didn't want to play with him. I remembered hugging him tightly, promising he would never be alone. I remembered him sleeping on my chest when he was afraid of the dark, asking me not to let go. I remembered him telling me when he was 9 years old that I was his favorite person in the world. At what moment did all of that break? A bitter pang shot through my stomach. There were signs. There were always signs. Signs I ignored because I was too busy justifying the unjustifiable. I remembered when he was 15 and I caught him stealing money from his father's wallet. He cried. He swore it was to buy gifts for his friends. His father wanted to punish him. I interceded. I said it had been a mistake, that he was just a teenager, that he would learn. I remembered when, as an adult, he asked me to loan him a large sum for a business that never existed. He lied to me. I found out months later, but I justified him again. "He's trying to find his way," I repeated to myself. I remembered how his wife, Jessica, always looked at him with impatience, with demand, as if he were an investment that had to yield returns. She didn't love him. She molded him, pushed him, manipulated him. I saw it. I knew it. But I closed my eyes. I thought that with time he would understand that love wasn't that, but perhaps he understood something else. Perhaps he understood that I would always forgive him, that I would always be available, that he could fail me and I would still be there. The problem with giving too much is that some stop seeing us as people and start seeing us as resources. I stood up from the grass slowly, wiping my hands on my skirt. The sky was dark, starless, a perfect metaphor for what my life had been for the last few years. Walking without seeing, trusting in a love that didn't exist. But as I stood there, a phrase began to repeat in my mind. "I never wanted this, Mom." The phrase Ethan said every time he hurt, lied, or failed. Always the same phrase, always the same tone. And suddenly I understood. He never wanted this, but he did want something else. To be free of me. Free of someone who reminded him of what he should do. Free of responsibility, of gratitude, of true love. Free to keep my money. I went back to the front of the house. I didn't go in. I stayed watching from the partially open window. Robert wanted to leave. Ethan was sitting with his hands in his hair, murmuring words I couldn't distinguish. He wasn't crying for me. He was crying out of fear and for the money. That image hit me like a freezing wave. I forced myself to look away. I had to process what happened without them seeing me broken. I walked toward the street. The night was completely silent. That silence invited me to remember things I had kept buried for too long. I remembered my late husband, Henry, a good, hard-working man who loved our son with a simple but firm affection. He saw things I didn't see. Many times he tried to warn me, "You spoil him too much. You're giving him everything without him earning it. Someday it's going to hurt you." I used to get angry when he said those things. I thought he was exaggerating, that he didn't understand our son's sensitivity. I thought that with love, everything could be corrected. I was wrong. And now the mistake was chasing me with the face of my son, laughing at my death. I took a deep breath. There was something else I couldn't ignore. The accident. As I walked down the sidewalk, I remembered the scene at the airport. Ethan insisted on driving me. He insisted on checking the time. He insisted I take that flight. He insisted I not be late. And when I said goodbye to him, he didn't look at me like a mother leaving. He looked at me like someone observing a transaction about to be completed. I couldn't prove it yet, but in my soul, there were no longer doubts. Someone had manipulated that accident. Maybe not him directly, but he knew too much, or desired it too much. I stopped under a streetlight. My breathing was deep, heavy. I had two options: either confront everything immediately with boiling rage, or analyze, observe, and plan. I chose the second. Not out of fear, but out of intelligence. Revenge is never effective when it is screamed. It is effective when executed in silence. I looked toward the house one more time. They were inside, locked in their own panic, and I, for the first time in years, had control. I turned and started walking. I had to look for answers. I had to understand who else knew. I had to reconstruct my own history from the beginning, because now I saw clearly what I had never wanted to see. Ethan didn't become this way today. My son was always this way, and I never wanted to accept it. I walked aimlessly for several minutes, as if the street could absorb part of the pain I carried inside. But the further I went, the clearer a sensation became that I had tried to ignore from the moment I crawled out of the plane wreckage. Something about that accident had been wrong from the start. And the voice of that man in the living room, Robert, saying Ethan had insisted, resonated like a late warning. The night wind hit my cheeks as I thought about every detail of the previous day. There was something so precise, so strange, so calculated, that now it felt like one piece fitting into another. I decided to head to the airport. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but I knew that if I returned to my house without answers, I might lose control. And confronting my son prematurely, without proofs, without a plan, I hailed a taxi. The driver looked at me through the rearview mirror with a certain compassion. My clothes still had stains of dirt and smoke. I must have looked like an apparition. "Are you sure, ma'am?" "It's late. I need to be there," I responded, without explaining more. The airport at night had an unsettling calm, as if it didn't want to remember the chaos of the day before. Upon getting out of the taxi, I felt a chill run down my spine. The entrance was almost empty, save for some maintenance workers and a woman in uniform looking at her cell phone. I approached the information desk. The man behind the counter looked up, surprised. "Ma'am, do you need help?" There was something in his look that unsettled me. Maybe he recognized the flight residue on my clothes. Maybe he recognized the sadness. "I was on flight 782, I said quietly. The man froze. Then he nodded slowly, with a mixture of respect and horror. "You survived." "Yes," I replied. "And I need to speak with someone who was here yesterday. Someone who remembers who checked me in, who was at the gate. Anything." He dialed an internal number. He asked me to wait. After a few minutes, a woman appeared in a blue vest, her face kind but tired. "I'm Sarah," she said. "I work at the boarding gate. How can I help you?" I followed her to an empty room. Upon closing the door, she sat across from me. "Ma'am, I don't want to make you relive anything painful, but you were one of the last people to board that flight. I was there." My heart did a flip. "Do you remember anything strange?" I asked. She furrowed her brow, as if choosing her words with care. "Actually, yes. I felt the air become denser. Tell me everything, please." Sarah took a deep breath. "First, you seemed rushed, as if you had changed your mind. At the last minute, my son insisted I travel," I murmured. She nodded without really understanding, but what caught my attention was something else. My body tensed. "What else?" "There was a man who asked if you had boarded yet." "A man," I repeated. What did he look like? About 50 years old, dark suit, didn't look like a traveler. He had a very urgent tone of voice, and when I told him you were about to enter, he walked away talking on the phone. Did you hear anything? Only 2 words. It's done. My stomach closed like a fist. It's done. The same phrase I heard inside my house. The same phrase Robert repeated with cynicism. The same phrase they used when talking about my inheritance. I felt cold. So cold. Do you remember anything else? I asked. Sarah hesitated. Well, there was a second detail, one that at the time seemed like just a coincidence to me, but now that I see you here, I don't know. Say it. A week earlier, she continued, someone had called asking specifically about that flight. They asked if it was safe, if there were reports of trajectory faults, if there would be delays. At that moment, I thought it was a nervous passenger. My heart pounded against my chest. And who was it? No name. But the number was blocked. I couldn't answer. My breathing became a fragile thread. Sarah rested a hand on the table. I know this doesn't help the pain, but I had to tell you so you don't think everything was a coincidence. I covered my face with both hands. I didn't cry. I was beyond tears. When I left the airport, my mind was a whirlwind. A man asking about me, someone investigating the flight, my son insisting on the date, my brother-in-law saying better sooner than later, my daughter-in-law toasting saying finally, and the accident. That accident that no one should have survived. I stopped next to a column to catch my breath. The smell of the airport churned my stomach. My head was spinning. That wasn't an accident. It hadn't been an accident. Maybe it never was. And then, as if fate wanted to hammer in the last piece of the puzzle, I heard my name. Martha. I turned sharply. A short woman, with a cane and a face marked by light scars, was observing me as if she had seen a ghost. Were you on that flight? She asked. My heart beat violently. Yes. She swallowed hard. She stifled a cry. She was another survivor. I need to talk to you, she added, trembling. It wasn't a coincidence that plane went down. And you need to know what I saw before we took off. The world stopped. What did you see? She looked around nervously. A conversation. A man talking on the phone repeated your name. He said everything was ready so you wouldn't come back. My skin crawled completely. Can you describe that man? The woman took a deep breath. I can do something better. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small sketchbook. I can draw him. I'm a portrait artist. She sat on a bench. She started tracing lines fast, precise, sure. When she turned the notebook toward me, I felt my heart stop. Do you recognize him? She asked. I recognized him. My God. How could I not? He was someone who had been in my house hundreds of times, someone I had fed, helped, listened to, someone I would have never suspected. It was Robert, my brother-in-law. And with that image in front of me, I understood that they hadn't just betrayed me. They had tried to kill me. I returned home walking as if my legs were no longer mine. The drawing of Robert's face kept burning my hands. I saw it again and again every time I blinked. He had been at the airport. He had asked about me. He had said, "It's done." He, my brother-in-law, the brother of the man I loved, my son's uncle, the person who for years ate at my table, drank my coffee, and laughed in my living room. He had been a key piece so that I wouldn't return alive. And if Robert was there, if he moved pieces, if he spoke on the phone, then he wasn't acting alone. Necessarily someone else knew the plan. Someone who benefited, someone who celebrated immediately. My son. Upon arriving home, I didn't enter through the front door. I didn't want them to know I was back yet. I circled the house in silence, heart pounding against my ribs, and approached a partially open window. From there, I heard voices continuing to argue inside. "I told you not to celebrate so soon," Ethan shouted, his voice broken as if fear was beginning to devour him. "And what did you want me to do?" Robert responded. "You said yourself it was impossible for anyone to come out of that accident alive." My heart shuddered. He had said the key word, impossible. "You shouldn't have pressured her to travel," Robert insisted. That was too obvious. "You were the one who talked to that man at the airport," Ethan snapped. My breathing stopped for a second. There was another man involved. There was someone else. Jessica jumped into the conversation. And now what are we going to do? If she is alive, we lose everything, not just the inheritance. They are going to investigate us. Ethan screamed desperately. Shut up, don't say that. It was then that I felt something rising in my throat, a mixture of pain, rage, and clarity. It wasn't just Robert's idea, nor just Ethan's idea. The idea had been hers, Jessica's. Something inside me was burning. It was no longer fear. It was a colder fire. Justice. I moved slowly away from the window before they saw me. I couldn't keep listening. Not because it hurt, yes. But what I needed now wasn't more sadness. It was strategy. I walked to the front of the house. The fresh air hit my face. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. The moment had arrived. But before I continue, tell me here in the comments what you think of this story so far and what you would do in my place. Don't leave the video because what comes next will give you goosebumps. When I opened my eyes, I walked toward the front gate. There was my neighbor, Susan, wrapped in a robe, looking toward my house with an expression that mixed fright and curiosity. Martha, she whispered as soon as she saw me. They are saying that you. I'm alive, I responded, without softening my tone. And I need to talk to you. She opened the gate immediately and took me by the arm as if she were afraid to lose me again. Come in. I made tea. I thought I would never see you again. I entered her house, where everything was calm, warm, almost normal. She led me to the dining room while serving tea. Her hands were trembling. Martha, there is something I have to tell you, something I heard, but I didn't know whether to tell you. I was afraid. My throat tightened. Tell me everything, Susan, please. She sat across from me, took a deep breath, and looked down. 2 weeks ago, your daughter-in-law came to talk to me. I felt my heart stop again. She told me, Susan continued, that she was worried about your mental state, that you were forgetting things, acting strangely, that maybe you needed help or even… Susan swallowed hard. A conservatorship. The world spun. They wanted to declare me incompetent. Susan nodded. She asked me that if I saw anything strange in you, to report it. She even offered me money. Susan looked away, ashamed. Of course I didn't accept. But now I understand why. My heart beat violently. They tried to kill me. But before that, they tried to take away my freedom, my name, my assets. Susan sighed. And that's not all. A chill ran down my back. Your son was with her, and he said something horrible. He said, if the legal part fails, the trip part won't fail. I didn't understand at that moment, but now, she covered her mouth. Now I understand everything. The room closed in on me. My son, my own son, had spoken of 2 plans, 2 paths to get rid of me. It was deeper than I thought, more twisted, darker. My vision blurred for an instant. Susan took my hands. Martha, listen, I know this is too much, but you have to act. If they suspect you know, they might try something worse. I didn't doubt it. They won't try it, I responded, with a certainty I hadn't felt in years. They won't have the chance. I stood up. Susan looked at me with fear. What are you going to do? What I never did in my life, I replied. Protect myself from my own family. I took a slow breath. Susan, I need the names of everyone you have heard arguing with them. I need dates, comments, anything. I need witnesses. I need proof. She nodded without hesitation. Whatever you need, Martha, I'll help you. As she handed me a folder with old notes, things she had recorded without knowing they would be vital, I understood something more clearly than ever. The 3 of them had dug their own grave. And I just had to show the world where the shovel was. I approached the window and looked toward my house, where the lights were on and shadows moved from side to side. I thought of the girl I was, the mother I had been, the love I gave without reservation, and I finally understood who I was now. Not a victim, not a survivor. A woman they tried to kill and who returned to level everything. The first domino was ready to fall. I returned to my house with Susan's folder pressed tight against my chest, as if it were an invisible shield. But it wasn't a shield, it was a weapon. One they themselves had handed me unknowingly, with every reckless comment, every lie, every plan spoken too loudly. The walk to my door felt different. Before, it was the house where the family I thought I had lived. Now, it was a crime scene. Not of my death, they didn't manage to achieve that, but of the deepest crime, erasing me from their hearts long before trying to erase me from life. I didn't enter immediately. I stood a few seconds in front of the door, listening. Everyone was arguing inside. Their voices came muffled, but clear words were heard like problem, ruin, police, plan. Hearing them panic was just a small comfort, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. Before entering, I dialed a number on my phone. It was a person I hadn't seen in years, but whose professionalism I had never forgotten. Rachel Sterling, criminal defense attorney. She had been a close friend of my late husband, Henry, although she never had a relationship with Ethan or Jessica. If anyone could handle this situation without fear, it was her. She answered on the third ring. "Martha?" she asked with disbelief. "Is that you? I heard about the crash." "I'm alive, Rachel. And I need to see you. Are you okay?" "No," I responded coldly. "But I need you to help me ensure that the people who did this aren't okay either." There was a silence, and then, "Tell me where you are. I'm coming immediately." I put the phone away and took a deep breath. I entered. The three of them froze when they saw me appear in the living room. Ethan looked paler than before, Jessica unhinged, and Robert put his hand in his pocket as if looking for something. "Were you waiting for me?" I asked calmly. Jessica swallowed a fake sob. "Martha, we were worried. We didn't know if you had left." "I haven't left," I said, "and I'm not leaving until we finish this." The three remained rigid. It was evident they didn't know how to react to someone who no longer feared anything. "I need you to tell me the truth," I added, "and I'm warning you now. If you lie to me, I will know." Ethan took a step toward me, his voice broken. "Mom, please, don't make this more difficult." "Difficult was surviving the impact," I responded. "Difficult was dragging myself through broken seats, hearing a child scream for his mother while I tried to understand if I was still alive. Difficult was waking up and remembering that you had insisted so much I take that flight." Jessica gasped. Robert clenched his teeth. I looked at them one by one. Who planned it? A thick silence fell over the room. Ethan opened and closed his mouth, but no sound came out. Jessica looked down, but her accelerated breathing gave her away. Robert took a step back, measuring the distance to the door. "Let's see who talks first," I said. I approached the table. There were remains of the celebration, open bottles, plates with half-eaten food, empty glasses. It was the physical evidence of absolute contempt. Then I touched the rim of one of the bottles. "Interesting choice," I commented. "Imported champagne. You wouldn't even buy this for my birthday." Jessica opened her mouth, but I didn't let her speak. "I'm glad you toasted with a good wine," I continued. "It will be the last nice thing you remember before everything comes down." Ethan got agitated. "What are you going to do, Mom? Do you want to ruin our lives?" My voice came out so serene he backed away. "No, son. I didn't come to ruin your lives." They looked at me confused. "I came to give you exactly what you wanted from me." Robert was sweating. "Look, Martha, it was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding," I interrupted him. "Or a trip that wasn't supposed to have a return?" He looked away. That was enough. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. It was Rachel. "I'm outside," she texted. I smiled. "Perfect," I replied. I turned toward them. "We are going to make this simple. In 5 minutes, my lawyer is going to walk through that door, and you can talk to her or to the police. You choose." Ethan paled. "You called a lawyer?" "No," I corrected. "I called the best one I know, and the only one you can't buy." Jessica began to tremble. "Martha, I swear that I—" "Don't even try," I cut her off. "I am not the same woman who left this house for the airport. The one who came back has no fear." I swallowed hard. "Because I already know who started it all." They tensed up. "There had to be a brain," I added. "Someone who convinced, who pressured, who manipulated." I walked slowly toward Robert. "That was you, wasn't it?" He stepped back. "You have no proof." I pulled out Susan's folder. "Yes, I do." Ethan's eyes opened wide. "What is that?" "Testimonies," I said. "Conversations heard by neighbors, reckless comments made in too loud a voice, notes, dates. And if that wasn't enough, I also have a portrait." Robert paled immediately. A portrait of what? I looked directly at him. Of you. At the airport. His body slumped onto the sofa. Ethan exploded. My God, Uncle. You were at the airport? Robert didn't answer. Jessica screamed. Are you crazy? You got us all into this. And just at that moment, the door opened. Rachel walked in, elegant, secure, prepared. The three of them froze. Good evening, she said with a firm voice. I am Martha's attorney, and I came to hear who wants to talk first. Ethan swallowed hard. Jessica began to cry. Robert tried to stand up, but his legs didn't respond. For the first time since the accident, I felt power returning to me. Because with Rachel there, and with the truth approaching, their fall had just begun. Rachel advanced through the living room as if she were a judge entering the courtroom. Her presence alone changed the atmosphere. Ethan shrank into the sofa like a small child. Jessica dried tears I didn't believe, and Robert tried to catch his breath, but every second he sank deeper. Let's start, Rachel announced, placing her briefcase on the center table. And I want to make something clear. What you say here can decide your fate. Ethan clenched his teeth. Fate? What? Now you're going to threaten us? Rachel raised an eyebrow with cold calm. I don't need to threaten you. You already put yourselves in your own hole. I'm just here to see who tries to climb out and who stays buried. I settled into a chair by the window. I didn't need to speak yet. They were about to destroy themselves. Let's go step by step, Rachel said. Martha survived, and that means that what you discussed, celebrated, and planned didn't vanish into thin air. We have witnesses. We have statements. We have a sketch of the gentleman she looked at Robert at the airport talking on the phone before takeoff. Do you want to start? Robert swallowed. No, it wasn't what you think. Jessica interrupted him furiously. Of course it was what you think. They heard you, they saw you, and you told us it was safe that flight had no way to fail. Shut up, he roared. I won't shut up, she screamed. You got us into this. Rachel didn't stop them. On the contrary, she seemed to enjoy how they destroyed each other. Interesting, she said. So you, ma'am, knew there was a plan. Jessica froze. I just repeated what he said. I had no idea. Rachel opened her briefcase with delicate movements and took out a small device. Perfect. Because we are going to make this easier. Martha, put it on the table. It was a digital recorder. Ethan stood up abruptly. Are you recording this conversation? Rachel stared at him. I am documenting, and I'm glad you noticed because it means you understand the gravity. Ethan began to walk in circles, sweating. This is madness, Mom. Are you really going to allow them to treat us like criminals? I looked at him without blinking. And what are you if not that? His face crumbled. I never wanted you to die, he shouted. Never. It was their idea. He pointed at Robert, completely out of his mind. My idea? Robert shouted back. You insisted. You said it was the perfect day. You signed the insurance papers. The world stopped. Insurance. My son confirmed it unintentionally. Rachel opened a folder. I just wanted to talk about that, she said. I have copies of the life insurance contracts that you, young man. She looked him straight in the eyes, managed 3 months before the accident. Curious, no? The beneficiary wasn't your mother's estate. It was you. Ethan backed away as if he had been hit. No, that's not what you think. Was it out of affection? Rachel asked with a tone that cut. He clung to a cushion as if it were a life preserver. I had debts. I was desperate. I thought that if something happened, my voice finally spoke. Something like what, son? He didn't answer. Rachel stepped forward. Let's continue with you, she looked at Robert. We have direct testimony from a survivor who saw you at the airport talking about how Martha wouldn't return. Any explanation? He grabbed his head. It wasn't what you think. I was following instructions. Jessica interrupted him with a shriek. Instructions from whom? Silence fell. The question floated among everyone. Robert trembled. I just did what they told me, what he asked me. He pointed to Ethan. Ethan shouted like a cornered animal. You lie! Liar! Rachel raised a hand. There is a very simple way to resolve this. She opened her briefcase. Call the police right now. The three reacted at the same time. Jessica collapsed on the sofa, crying. Robert began to walk backward as if looking for a secret exit. Ethan clenched both fists. "You can't do that." "We are your family," he screamed at me. I looked at him, and for the first time in my life, I didn't see my son. I saw the man who almost killed me. "My family," I said slowly, "died the day you celebrated mine." He stood petrified. Rachel took her phone. "Last chance. Which of you spoke with the man at the airport?" Robert raised his hands. "It was me. It was me. But—" He pointed at Ethan. "He knew everything. I just executed what they wanted." He pointed at Jessica. "She pressured him. She needed the money." She? Jessica screamed. "Enough. It was him. He planned it all. I just. Her voice broke. Ethan slammed his hand on the table. "Shut up, everyone." And then he made the fatal mistake. If everything had gone as we wanted, none of this would be happening. The silence was absolute. Rachel smiled slowly. "Perfect." She pressed a button on the recorder. Full confession. Ethan brought his hands to his face. Jessica trembled. Robert cried. I just breathed without pain for the first time. Rachel put the recorder away. "Martha, we are ready. Do you want me to call now?" "Yes," I responded without hesitation. "It's time to end this." Rachel dialed a number. "Officer Miller? We have a case of attempted premeditated murder, 3 implicated. Confession recorded. Address." My son ran toward me and grabbed my arm. "Mom, please don't do it." I pulled my arm away calmly. "Son." He looked up with eyes full of fake tears. "I survived, and now it's your turn to survive the truth." In that instant, sirens were heard in the distance. The fall could no longer be stopped. The sirens sounded closer and closer, mixing with the sound of the wind hitting the open windows. Everything seemed suspended, as if time had decided to watch what was about to happen. Inside the living room, my son was paralyzed, breathing with difficulty, his face completely composed of terror. Jessica could barely stay standing, and Robert kept looking toward the door like a trapped animal looking for an exit that no longer exists. Rachel checked the recorder one last time, verifying the audio was complete. Then she closed her briefcase with the calm of someone who has already won a battle before it starts. I sat in the chair next to the table. I was exhausted, but stable. More stable than them. Because the truth was that I had already cried everything I had to cry. Now only justice remained. The sirens stopped in front of the house. Car doors opening, firm steps, voices of officers were heard. Ethan brought his hands to his head desperately. "Mom, I beg you, please don't allow this," he whispered with a broken voice, as if he only now understood that life isn't played like a game. I observed him. There was no hate in me. Not for him. There was something harder, more heartbreaking. Disappointment. A disappointment so great it had hollowed out an entire space inside my chest. "I can't protect you anymore, son," I responded with a low but firm voice. "You treated me like an enemy. You celebrated my death and then tried to erase it forever. What did you want me to do?" He shook his head over and over as if he could undo what happened. "I didn't want you to die. I didn't want that. It was just pressure. It was just fear. I was desperate." Rachel intervened harshly. "Desperation doesn't justify fraudulent insurance policies, calls to the airport, nor planning the death of a person." Jessica took a step forward, falling to her knees in front of me. She grabbed my skirt as if it were a life raft. "Martha, I was part of it, yes, but I didn't know how far this would go. I thought it was just a way to insure ourselves. I thought it was an exaggeration." I looked at her coldly. "You said that finally you would be free," I reminded her, "and that the best part of all would be the inheritance." She closed her eyes, crying. The officers knocked on the door. Rachel opened it without waiting. 4 agents entered, one of them with an impeccable uniform and a firm gaze. "Mrs. Martha Anderson," he said with a respectful gesture, "we were informed that you survived the crash and that there is a report of attempted homicide. Are you in a condition to confirm what happened?" I nodded calmly. "Yes, detective. I have evidence, recordings, witnesses, and the full confession of those involved." The officers turned toward the 3 accused. Ethan took a step back. No, no, I didn't do anything. Everything is a confusion. Detective Miller remained neutral. We have a recording in which you explicitly declare that if everything had gone as you wanted, none of this would be happening. Ethan clenched his fists. That doesn't mean that I... But his voice faded. The officers surrounded the three of them. It was impressive to see how the masks fell instantly. Jessica began to cry louder, pleading, "Please, I have children. You can't do this to me. I had no intention of killing anyone." The officer responded firmly. "You were celebrating the death of a person, and there is evidence of your participation in the planning. That is conspiracy." Robert tried to flee toward the side door, but two officers intercepted him in seconds. They grabbed him by the arms and he began to scream, "I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to. It was them. I just followed orders." Rachel looked at him with irony. "Poor thing. Didn't they tell you that following orders is also a crime?" My son turned to me one last time, desperate. "Mom, please. I'm your son. I'm your blood. You can't do this." I felt a deep pain in my chest, an old pain of years, but I also knew that letting go was the only way to live. "You did this to me first," I responded. "I just chose to survive." The officers began to handcuff them. Jessica screamed, Robert cried, and my son said nothing, only looked at me with a mixture of rage, fear, and shame. When they took him out of the house, I didn't move. It wasn't triumph, it wasn't revenge, it was justice. The justice they themselves forced me to seek. Rachel returned to the living room and closed the door. "It's done," she said, letting out a sigh. "Now begins the second part." "The second part?" I asked. "Yes. The statements, the judges, the paperwork, the evidence. Now the legal process begins. But don't worry, Martha. They themselves already did half the work. They practically served it up on a platter." I nodded in silence. Rachel observed me with sweetness. "Are you okay?" It took me a second to answer. "I am empty," I responded. "It's normal," she said. "When a truth like this is revealed, it feels as if life has broken." "And it did break," I replied. "But maybe it was necessary." Rachel touched my shoulder and spoke in a softer tone. "Martha, this is not your fault. It never was." And for the first time since the accident, I believed those words. The following days were an overwhelming mix of paperwork, questions, investigations, and headlines. My name appeared on the news. The story of the woman who survived a plane crash and discovered her own family celebrating her death went viral. Some were scandalized, others cried. Some sent me messages of support, others wanted interviews. I rejected them all. I didn't want to be famous. I just wanted peace. The three were formally accused. Attempted premeditated murder, insurance fraud, criminal conspiracy, obstruction of justice. Rachel handled everything flawlessly. She was implacable. During the depositions, Ethan tried to blame Robert. Jessica tried to blame Ethan. And Robert tried to blame everyone. But the recording that recorder Rachel turned on at the exact moment was their sentence. The district attorney was impressed with the clarity of the evidence. In the end, they accepted a plea deal. Robert, 15 years in prison. Jessica, 8 years for complicity, fraud, and concealment. Ethan, 20 years. The one who had the most to lose. The one who did the most to gain money from my death. The one who knew the most. The one who lied the most. The one who celebrated the most. When I found out, I didn't cry. I stayed in silence looking at the sentencing paper. It was strange, very strange. He was my son, but at the same time, he wasn't. There was a deep pain, yes, but also a liberation. A slow, hard, necessary liberation. 3 weeks after the sentencing, I went to my husband's grave. Rachel accompanied me, Susan too. I brought white flowers. I knelt in front of the headstone, touched his name with my fingers, felt something move inside me, something old, something sad. "Forgive me," I whispered. "You were right. You were always right." Rachel put a hand on my shoulder. "It's not your fault for having loved too much." I took a deep breath. But it was my mistake not seeing what was forming. She shook her head slowly. "Loving is not a mistake. Trusting is not a mistake. The mistake is committed by those who destroy what is given to them." Her words went through me like a ray of light. When the process ended, I moved to a small house near the sea in Florida. It wasn't big. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine, and it was quiet. The first few days I woke up startled, as if I expected to see Ethan enter through the door to ask me for money, or Jessica giving orders, or Robert lurking like a shadow. But there was no one, only me, and the sound of the ocean. For the first time in years, I slept without fear. I learned to cook for myself, to walk in the afternoons, to read without interruptions, to listen to my own thoughts, to love myself. Sometimes I cried. Yes, because grieving a living child is the most painful kind. But I also understood something. My son stopped being my son long before that trial. Maybe he stopped when money became more important than my life, or when he allowed others to poison what I had given him, or when he simply decided that I was an obstacle. I don't know. I will never find out. The only thing I know is that I survived. I survived the accident. I survived the betrayal. I survived the pain, and I survived the truth. One day, while walking along the shore, I stopped to look at the ocean. The wind moved my hair, the water caressed my feet, the sky was open. I closed my eyes, breathed deep, and said in a low voice, "Thank you for giving me a second life." Because that was what I had now. A new life. A life they couldn't take from me. A life that now belonged only to me. And as the sun set on the horizon, I understood something else. It wasn't just justice, it was rebirth. After everything ended, after the trial, the statements, the sleepless nights, and the truths that revealed themselves like sharp knives, I found myself again. I was 64 years old and had a life that seemed new, clean, like a house just opened after a storm. I was alone, yes. But for the first time in decades, that solitude wasn't a punishment. It was a space where I could breathe, think, and exist without fear. I bought a small cottage near the beach. Every morning I go out to walk on the sand, feeling the cold water touch my feet, reminding me that I am still here, that I am still alive, that I am still building something of my own. Sometimes, while I observe the horizon, I think about what happened not to suffer, but to understand. My son, my own blood, decided to erase my life for money. My daughter-in-law pushed him, my brother-in-law executed. And although it hurts, although sometimes the wound throbs, it no longer bleeds. I learned that it is not my obligation to carry the wickedness of others. I learned that love doesn't always come back. I learned that surviving isn't just breathing. It's getting up, walking, and rebuilding, even when the heart seems shattered to pieces. Today, when I look in the mirror, I see a different woman. A woman who was on the verge of death, who heard how they celebrated her absence, and even so, chose to get up and show the truth. A woman who no longer asks for permission to live. A woman who understands that justice, when it arrives, cleans deep wounds. Maybe not totally, but enough to move forward without chains. And now, before saying goodbye, I want to extend a very special invitation. If this story moved you, impacted you, or made you reflect, leave a like. Your support is what makes this channel possible. Tell me in the comments from which city you are watching, what you felt with this ending, and what you would have done in my place. And don't forget to subscribe. I have many more intense, deep stories full of twists that I am preparing for you. Thank you for accompanying me to the end. This story ends here, but not my voice. See you in the next one.